You can stand in faith for your household without turning every conversation into pressure, panic, or control. Let that settle in you. You can care deeply and still speak peacefully. You can carry real concern and still refuse to force an outcome. You do not have to make your home feel like an emergency in order to prove that your love is sincere. Parents know this weight. Spouses know it. Caregivers know it. You see someone you love making choices you do not understand, resisting what matters to you, or moving in a direction that frightens you. The worry follows you into the quiet hours. You rehearse what you ought to say. You lose sleep preparing an argument that has not happened yet. And because the concern is genuine, you may not notice when fear begins borrowing the language of love. Now notice the signs. The warning has already been given, but you give it again. Every ordinary conversation becomes an opening for another spiritual discussion. You monitor moods, decisions, friendships, and responses, looking for evidence that something is changing. You prepare answers before the other person has spoken. A disagreement feels like a crisis. Silence feels dangerous. Delay feels unbearable. And fear whispers if you really love them, you would do more. But more pressure is not always more love. Concern says, I desire your good. Fear says, I must secure your response. Love can long for change. Control demands change now on my terms, according to my timetable. Did you hear that? The desire is not the problem. The demand to govern another person's will is where faithful concern begins to lose its peace. Some of us need to acknowledge that without condemning ourselves. We were not trying to wound anyone. We were afraid. We thought urgency excused repetition. We thought sleeplessness proved devotion. We thought constant stress meant we were carrying the household faithfully. But panic is not proof of love, and pressure is not proof of faith. Here is the governing principle we will keep testing. Faithful household influence prays in hope, speaks peace, acts in love, and leaves personal choice with the other person. Let me repeat it. Pray in hope, speak peace, act in love, leave choice where choice belongs. Say this out loud. I can love faithfully without taking control. Again, I can love faithfully without taking control. That is not withdrawal. It is not indifference. It is not giving up on someone. It is choosing a form of love that remains present without becoming coercive. Faith says, I will remain faithful while entrusting what I cannot govern. Fear says, I must make this person change. Those two voices may sound similar at first because both speak with concern. But one produces patient influence, the other produces pressure. As we go forward, we are going to test our praying, our speech, our conduct, our boundaries, and even the way we repair harm when our concern has become heavy in the room. We will learn how to remain active without becoming controlling and hopeful without pretending we can guarantee another person's decision. So the next question is plain. What has faith truly been given to do, and what must remain outside our authority? Faith has been given something real to do, but it has not been given everything to do. That distinction can lift a burden many believers were never meant to carry. Faith governs your response. It does not grant you ownership of another person's will. Now notice where guilt enters. Somewhere beneath the concern, you may have accepted this hidden belief. If I pray correctly, speak strongly enough, and behave faithfully enough, I should be able to secure the response I desire. Then, when the response does not come, you conclude that you have failed. So you increase the pressure. You search for better words, stronger arguments, another opportunity. You take responsibility not only for your conduct, but also for their conclusion. But your spouse is not a project to complete. Your child is not a result to produce. Your relative is not a problem to manage. Every member of that household is a person to love, someone with a conscience, a history, a voice, and choices that remain their own. Let us make the boundary plain. You can pray, you can govern your tone, You can tell the truth honestly and without manipulation. You can set appropriate boundaries. You can live what you say you believe. You can apologize when you have caused harm. You can become more consistent tomorrow than you were yesterday. These are responsibilities you can obey. But you cannot choose another person's belief. You cannot command their timing. You cannot manufacture agreement. You cannot repent on their behalf. You cannot produce an inward decision by applying enough outward pressure. Those outcomes do not become yours merely because your love is sincere. Did you hear me? You are accountable for the faithfulness of your influence, not for manufacturing another person's decision. Influence offers truth and then gives that truth credibility through conduct. Control keeps pressing until the desired answer appears. Influence can speak clearly and remain peaceful. Control treats resistance as permission to intensify. Influence asks, how can I be faithful here? Control asks, what must I do to make them respond? Someone may say, then are you telling me to do nothing? No. Restraint is not passivity. Respect is not indifference. Releasing ownership of the outcome does not release you from prayer, courage, honesty, or loving action. It releases you from attempting to perform another person's part. Suppose a difficult conversation begins and you feel that familiar urgency rising. Pause and ask one simple question. Am I obeying my responsibility or am I trying to perform theirs? Ask it before you repeat yourself. Ask it before you interpret their silence. Ask it before you make one more appeal after the matter has already been made clear. Perhaps your responsibility is to listen. Perhaps it is to state the truth once, calmly. Perhaps it is to hold a necessary boundary. Perhaps it is to admit that your tone was wrong. Whatever faithfulness requires of you, do that. But do not reach across the boundary and call another person's response your assignment. Say it out loud. I am responsible for my influence, not for another person's will. Again, I will be faithful without taking ownership of their choice. That is disciplined love. Leaving choice with another person is not weak faith. It is faith refusing to disguise coercion as devotion. It is love accepting the full weight of its own responsibility while declining a weight that belongs elsewhere. And once that false weight is laid down, another question comes into view. If covenant hope does not guarantee someone else's behavior or timetable, what can it confidently sustain? Covenant hope can confidently sustain a faithful posture toward the future. It can steady your heart when the household remains strained. It can keep fear from announcing that everything is lost. It can remind you that you are not alone in loving these people and that your home has not been abandoned simply because you cannot see the ending. Now notice what hope does not require. Hope does not require you to predict another person's conversion, return, agreement, or timetable. It does not authorize you to promise what has not been given for you to know. No formula, declaration, or amount of effort places another person's future choices in your possession. That does not weaken covenant hope. It purifies it. Hope says God is faithful so I can obey today. Prediction says I know exactly how this must end. Hope remains strong when the path is unclear. Prediction becomes desperate when events do not follow the expected schedule. Hope gives you courage for your next act of love. Prediction tempts you to pressure people until reality matches the ending you have announced. Do you see the difference? One rests in the character of God. The other tries to secure certainty by writing another person's part in advance. Covenant hope is not possession of another person's future choices. It is confidence that you can remain faithful in the presence of uncertainty. You can pray without panic. You can tell the truth without demanding immediate agreement. You can endure a difficult season without treating every delay as defeat. You can refuse despair without pretending that you know what someone else will choose. Someone may object, but if I do not declare a certain ending, am I really standing in faith? Yes, because faith is not measured by how confidently you speak about matters outside your knowledge. It is measured in part by whether confidence in God produces obedient, peaceful, truthful love in you. Faith is not bargaining either. Prayer is not a transaction in which correct words purchase another person's compliance. Loving conduct is not a payment deposited until the household owes you the response you desire. You do not say, I prayed enough, served enough, waited enough, therefore this person must now choose what I want. That is not covenant confidence. That is bargaining dressed in religious language. And bargaining makes concern heavy again. If you believe your efforts should secure another person's decision, every unanswered appeal feels like a broken agreement. You become restless. You begin measuring your words, their expressions, the length of the delay. Soon the household can feel that your kindness carries an expectation and that every peaceful moment may become another attempt to obtain a result. But hope can love without keeping that account. Say this carefully, I will hope in God, love this person, and refuse to force the outcome. Again, and listen to every part. I will hope in God, love this person, and refuse to force the outcome. That declaration is strong enough to resist despair and restrained enough to protect trust. It does not say that nothing matters. It says that God's faithfulness matters, your conduct matters, and the other person's moral responsibility matters. Covenant hope holds all three without confusing them. Now, humility may require one more admission. Some of my attempts to help were mixed with fear. You may have spoken truth, yet spoken it anxiously. You may have meant to encourage, yet carried an unspoken demand. You may have prayed sincerely, while also bargaining for control. Growth begins when you can acknowledge that mixture without collapsing into shame. You are still learning. So am I. The answer is not to abandon hope, but to let hope become cleaner, quieter, and more steadfast. Hope in God. Love the person before you. Leave the unknown ending unwritten. Then ask the practical question. If this is covenant hope, how does it sound in prayer? How do you carry deep concern before God without turning prayer into another plan for governing the family? Prayer sounds like honest surrender. It does not deny the concern, and it does not carry that concern from room to room until everyone else feels it. Prayer brings the burden before God, so fear does not have to be transferred to the person you love. Now notice the contrast. Intercession says, God, here is what frightens me. Coercion says to the family member, you must relieve my fear by changing. Intercession seeks wisdom. Coercion repeats the same appeal with increasing urgency. You may call it another conversation, but if nothing new needs to be said, it may simply be anxiety looking for somewhere to go. Prayer is where you surrender the burden, not where you rehearse a plan to control the person. So how do you pray? Begin by naming the fear plainly. I am afraid this decision will cause harm. I am afraid the distance will continue. I am afraid I will say the wrong thing. Do not polish it. Bring the actual fear into the light. Then remember the governing hope. God is faithful, and you can be faithful today without possessing tomorrow. Ask for wisdom and help. Show me what belongs to my responsibility. Help me recognize what does not. Give me courage to act where I should and restraint where I should not. Then bless the person without scripting them. Ask for their good, for clarity, protection, grace, and truthful relationships. But leave room for their moral responsibility. Do not turn the prayer into a speech directing every step they must take and every word they must say. And now, listen for correction. This is where prayer becomes humbling. Ask, is fear shaping my tone? Am I trying to obtain peace by forcing an answer? Have I made this person carry the weight of my anxiety? Do I need to apologize? Pray for your own motives, patience, restraint, and willingness to repair harm not only for the other person to change. Finally, release the timetable. I will obey what is mine today, and I release what I cannot govern. That release may need to happen again tomorrow. That is all right. The longing for peace and relief from worry is not weakness. It is a sign that the burden needs a faithful place to go. Prayer provides that place when it moves you toward trust, wisdom, and responsible action. Imagine a caregiver who feels compelled to raise the same concern every evening. Supper ends, the room grows quiet, and urgency begins. Perhaps tonight I can finally make them understand. But this time the caregiver pauses, goes somewhere private, and prays through the movement we have just practiced. Name the fear. Remember hope. Ask for wisdom. Bless without scripting. Receive correction. Release the timing. Nothing outside may change immediately, but something within can become calmer. Later, if conversation is appropriate, the caregiver can listen first, speak one honest sentence, and resist turning the entire evening into another appeal. Prayer has created room for presence instead of pressure. Here is your pause rule. When panic rises, pray before you send the message. Pray before you repeat the warning. Pray before you escalate the discussion. Not a hurried prayer asking God to strengthen your argument, but an honest prayer that permits Him to correct your part in it. Say it aloud. I will carry my fear to God before I carry my words into the room. Again, I will pray, listen, obey, and release. Faith prays earnestly. Faith accepts correction. Faith releases the outcome. And after the burden has been placed in prayer, examine what remains in your mouth. If your words still carry panic, accusation, or hidden demand, then your speech has not yet agreed with your hope. Then let your mouth come under the same surrender as your prayer. Many believers place great importance on confession and spoken faith, and rightly understand that words can strengthen resolve, resist despair, and remind the heart where trust belongs. But listen carefully. Words that govern your own posture are not the same as words used to govern another person. You may say, I will trust God in this uncertainty. I will speak honestly. I will not surrender to bitterness. That confession directs your own faithfulness. But when you announce what another person will choose, assign motives they have not expressed, or declare their spiritual condition as though you possess complete knowledge, speech has crossed a boundary. Spiritual vocabulary does not make that trespass faithful. Here is the controlling principle. Faith-filled speech first governs the speaker. It must never become a verbal tool for governing someone else's will. Hopeful speech refuses despair without pretending to know the ending. Manipulative speech claims certainty about another person in order to corner them. Hope says, I believe God remains faithful and I will remain loving. Manipulation says, you will do this because I have declared it. Hope tells the truth and permits a response. Manipulation keeps talking until resistance becomes exhausting. Now bring that distinction into the household. Labeling is not discernment. Calling someone rebellious, faithless, selfish, or hardened may reduce a complicated person to the behavior that frightens you most. Public embarrassment is not courageous witness. Exposing a private struggle before relatives or friends may shame someone without helping them. Spiritual threats are not loving warnings when they are used to frighten a person into compliance. And watch the prayer that is spoken for someone else to overhear. A prayer can become passive-aggressive when it addresses God in form but accuses a family member in substance. Lord, help certain people in this house stop being so stubborn is not private intercession. It is confrontation, wearing the clothing of prayer. Then there is repetition. Counsel may be true, necessary, and lovingly given. But once it has been clearly heard, repeating it again and again does not make it more truthful. Sometimes restraint is the faithful sentence you do not add. So before you speak, use this three-part test. First, Is it true? Not suspected, exaggerated, or assumed true. Second, is it mine to say? A fact can be true and still not belong to you to disclose, announce, or press at that moment. Third, can I say it in a manner consistent with love? If truth arrives through contempt, humiliation, threat, or hidden demand, the manner has contradicted the message. Is it true? Is it mine to say? Can I say it with love? Those questions may lead you to speak clearly. They may lead you to wait. They may require a gentler tone, fewer words, a private setting, or an apology before any further counsel. Silence is not always fear, and speaking is not always courage. Faithfulness is choosing the response that carries truth without violating respect. Say this aloud: my words will carry truth, peace, patience, and respect. Again, I will not use spiritual language to shame, corner, or control. One more time. I will govern my mouth and leave another person's will in their hands. That is confession with proper authority. It strengthens your obedience. It disciplines your tone. It refuses hopelessness while making no counterfeit promise about another person's decision. But when the words have been restrained, love has not finished its work. A household experiences faith not only through what you refuse to say, but through what you repeatedly do when no immediate response is given. So now the question widens. When agreement does not come, what does faithful love do next? Faithful love does the next faithful thing. It may not solve the whole problem. It may not produce agreement. It may not even be recognized at once. But it asks a better question than fear asks. What would faithful love do next in this actual moment? Not someday when everyone understands you, not after the household becomes peaceful. In this moment, what does love do next? Perhaps it listens without preparing a rebuttal. Perhaps it keeps a promise made when emotions were calmer. It notices that someone is tired and shares the burden without using the kindness as an opening for another appeal. It maintains an appropriate boundary without punishment or contempt. It offers affection without an agenda. And when a conversation has reached its honest limit, love permits it to end. That last one may require discipline. You may still have 5 points left. You may believe one more explanation will settle everything. But if the other person has heard you and cannot continue well, faithful love may say, we do not have to finish this tonight. Then it stops. No remark from the hallway. No final correction after the door begins to close. Love knows that preserving room for future dialogue can be wiser than forcing a conclusion now. Now notice, dramatic spiritual gestures can attract attention, but a household lives with your daily conduct. The people nearest you encounter your tone. They encounter whether your promises can be trusted. They encounter your patience when plans change, your humility when you are wrong, and your willingness to help when nobody applauds. Long before they agree with your beliefs, they are experiencing what those beliefs produce in your presence. That is why this teaching must enter family life and daily habits. We are not looking for a technique that guarantees change, but no habit can purchase another person's response. We are asking whether faith has become visible in ways the household can actually receive. Steadiness, honesty, service, respect, appropriate affection, and prompt repair. Did you hear me? The credibility of household faith is often measured in repeated conduct long before it is measured in agreement. But loving conduct does not mean enabling harm. It does not require you to abandon wise limits, conceal serious problems, accept abuse, or pretend destructive behavior is harmless. A loving boundary can be clear and firm. I care about you, but I will not participate in this. Love does not remove truth from the room. It removes the attempt to use truth as domination. It can protect what must be protected while refusing revenge. Consider a husband and wife divided over a spiritual matter. One spouse enters the conversation determined to win. Every objection already has an answer. Every pause feels like an invitation to press harder. Then the question comes, what would faithful love do next in this actual moment? The spouse slows down, listens all the way through, asks a sincere question instead of setting a trap, then says, I do have one concern and I want to state it honestly. The concern is expressed once without accusation. There is no demand for an immediate answer. The conversation ends with the relationship still intact and the possibility of future dialogue still open. Was the disagreement solved? No. Was faithfulness present? Yes. Truth was not abandoned. Neither was respect. So bring prayer, speech, and conduct together. Pray earnestly. Speak truthfully. Then behave in a manner consistent with what you have prayed and spoken. Listen. Keep your word. Share the load. Hold the right boundary. Show care freely. Let the conversation end when it should. Say it aloud, I will do the next faithful thing without demanding the final result. Again, my household will encounter my faith through my conduct. That is active love. And now we must place it where the pressure rises, where objections sharpen, departures sting, and alarming news arrives. The principle sounds clear in a quiet room. The next test is whether it remains clear when fear returns. Put the principle at the table. Where an adult child announces a decision the parent believes is unwise. The parent feels the questions gathering. Who influenced you? How long have you planned this? Have you considered what this will do to us? Each question may sound reasonable by itself, but together they can become an interrogation disguised as concern. What is the faithful response? The parent may say, I love you and I need to be honest. I believe this choice carries serious consequences. Then listen. Ask only what is necessary for understanding or safety. Do not make continued warmth depend upon surrender. Do not revisit the issue at breakfast, in a message that afternoon, and again before bed. Now apply the test. Pray in hope. Speak peace. Act in love. Leave the decision where it belongs. The parent's concern is not erased. The adult child's agency is not erased either. Move to the doorway. Two spouses disagree about a spiritual practice. One wants the other to participate and says it would mean a great deal to me if you came. That can be an invitation. But if affection cools when the answer is no, if approval is withheld, or if household peace becomes conditional upon participation, the invitation has quietly become a demand. You see, pressure is not only carried by loud words. It can be carried by a withdrawn hand, a punishing silence, or a kindness that disappears when the desired answer does not come. The believing spouse can state the desire honestly. I would be glad for us to do this together, but I do not want to force you. Then the spouse must live consistently with that sentence. Apply the test again. Pray in hope. Speak peace. Act in love. Leave the decision where it belongs. Hope remains active, but affection is not used as leverage. Now the late night phone rings. A caregiver hears alarming news. Someone has gone where they should not have gone, made a dangerous choice, or failed to return when expected. Fear rises quickly, and some situations require immediate protective action. But urgency does not excuse accusation, humiliation, or needless surveillance. Pause long enough to separate what is known from what is feared. Ask the necessary questions. Take responsible steps. Set a clear limit if safety requires it. But do not turn uncertainty into a verdict or concern into permission to monitor every movement afterward. Once more, pray in hope, speak peace, act in love, leave the decision where it belongs. You may respond firmly without attempting to possess another person's will. But what if silence looks like approval? Then do not remain silent when truth or safety requires speech. Say what is true, plainly and once. Restraint is not pretending wrong is right. What if they never change? Then covenant hope will still sustain your obedience without promising their timetable. You can maintain boundaries, refuse bitterness, and continue loving without inventing certainty. What if I am the only one trying? Then let your effort be faithful, not controlling. Persistent love does not mean accepting mistreatment or carrying the entire relationship alone. It means your conduct will not be governed by revenge merely because another person is not responding well. Pressure does not change the principle, it reveals what is governing you. In every room, hope prays, peace speaks, love acts, and agency is respected. And perhaps you recognize yourself in one of those rooms. Most of us can. We remember the extra question, the withdrawn affection, the frightened accusation. That recognition is not an invitation to condemnation, it is an invitation to honesty. The next faithful act may be repair. If fear has already made your faith feel heavy, how do you acknowledge the harm, apologize without defending yourself, and begin rebuilding trust when forgiveness or agreement does not come immediately? Begin here. Sincere motives do not erase the effect of controlling conduct. You may have acted because you cared. You may have feared real consequences. You may have believed you were protecting someone. Those motives matter, but they do not cancel the pressure another person experienced. Now notice what mature faith does. It does not hide behind good intentions. It becomes teachable. It can say, I meant well, and I still caused harm. That is not humiliation. That is honesty strong enough to change course. Use this repair sequence. Name the specific behavior. Acknowledge its effect. Do not defend your motive. Ask forgiveness. State what you intend to practice differently. Then give the other person room to respond freely. Keep it plain. I questioned you repeatedly after you had already answered me. I can see that this made you feel managed instead of loved. That was wrong. Will you forgive me? I intend to listen more carefully, speak my concern once, and stop pressing for the answer I want. You do not have to respond right now. Do you hear the difference? That apology accepts responsibility without trying to control the next moment. A disguised lecture sounds different. I am sorry I kept questioning you, but you frightened me, and if you had explained yourself better, I would not have needed to keep asking. That is not repair. It begins with apology and ends by returning the blame. The word sorry becomes an entrance to another argument. A true apology does not explain why the injured person caused your conduct. It tells the truth about what you did. Imagine a parent speaking to an adult child after weeks of strained conversation. The parent says, I have been thinking about how I responded to your decision. I asked the same questions in different ways because I wanted you to change your answer. I see now that my concern came across as an attempt to manage you. You may have felt that I could not respect you unless you agreed with me. I am sorry. I still have concerns, but I will not keep using them to pressure you. I want to practice listening, respecting your choices, and showing love without attaching a demand. Then the parent stops. No request for reassurance. No, do you understand my heart? No test to see whether the child is sufficiently appreciative. The child may accept the apology warmly. The child may remain guarded. The child may say, I need time. Repair makes room for every honest response. You see, an apology is not a technique for securing immediate reconciliation. It is an act of obedience and truthfulness. If you apologize only to obtain trust, agreement, affection, or quick relief from guilt, control has merely changed its clothing. You are still trying to determine the other person's response. Trust may return slowly because pressure was repeated slowly. Let change conduct support the words. Ask fewer questions. Keep affection steady. Honor the space you promise to give. When you slip, acknowledge it promptly. Credibility is rebuilt through truth practiced over time. Say it aloud. I will repair what is mine without demanding the response I desire. Again, I can be teachable without being condemned. Mature faith does not need to appear flawless. It can receive correction, confess wrong, and practice a better way. Repair is faithful even when it is not immediately rewarded with trust or agreement. And that brings us to the harder season. You have apologized, changed your conduct, and still see little movement. How do you remain faithful in that long middle without turning delay into despair or returning to pressure? The long middle is the season after you have prayed, restrained your words, made repair, and begun to act differently, yet the person you love remains distant, divided, guarded, or undecided. Nothing appears settled. You have done the next faithful thing, but you cannot see where it is leading. That is where impatience begins watching for evidence. Was that warmer tone a sign? Did that quiet evening mean trust is returning? Does one difficult conversation mean the apology accomplished nothing? Outcome tracking takes every small movement and demands that it explain the future. But you have been given a better measure. When you cannot measure another person's movement, you can still measure the growing faithfulness of your own response. Ask different questions. Is my prayer becoming calmer and more honest? Is my speech becoming cleaner, less accusation, less repetition, less hidden demand? Are my boundaries wiser and more consistent? Is my love steady when I receive no encouraging response? Do I correct myself more quickly when fear takes over? Now notice, these questions do not make the other person irrelevant. They keep you accountable for the part that is actually yours. A small improvement may encourage you, but do not seize it and press for a final decision. If someone shares more openly, receive the conversation without saying, "So does this mean you finally agree?" If affection returns for a moment, do not turn that moment into another appeal. Let progress breathe. And if there is a setback, do not declare that nothing is working. One cold reply does not reveal the whole future. One renewed disagreement does not cancel every act of repair. Faithfulness is not proved by a perfect week, and hope is not disproved by a painful day. But I still feel grief. Of course you may. Peace is not emotional numbness. It is not pretending distance does not hurt, or convincing yourself that the outcome does not matter. Peace is the freedom to feel sorrow without letting fear choose your conduct. You may weep and still refuse to accuse. You may feel disappointed and still keep your word. You may carry concern and still speak with respect. Did you hear me? Panic is not proof that you care more, and passivity is not peace. Peace can act. It can ask for help, maintain a necessary limit, make another repair, or wait without forcing movement. And recurring worry and stress must not all be carried back to the strained relationship. The family member cannot become responsible for regulating every fear their choices awaken in you. Seek trustworthy counsel. Make room for rest. Keep healthy routines that steady your body and attention. Pray with people who will help you remain truthful and loving, not inflame suspicion or help you build another case. Support does not replace responsibility. It helps you sustain it. So what are you tracking now? Not every expression, not every pause, not every sign that might promise the ending you want. Track whether your influence is becoming more peaceful, your conduct more dependable, your boundaries more loving, and your repentance more prompt. Say it aloud. During delay, I will measure my faithfulness, not another person's timetable. Again, I can grieve without panicking, hope without predicting, and love without controlling. This is patient courage. Faith remains active by governing prayer, speech, boundaries, repair, and consistent love. It does not need a quick result to remain obedient today. Now we are ready to gather the whole message into one simple household rule, something you can rehearse, practice, and return to for the next 7 days. Here is the rule: pray in hope, speak peace, act in love, repair quickly, and leave personal choice with the other person. Now those words carry the whole message. Pray in hope means you bring concern before God without turning prayer into a demand for another person's compliance. Speak peace means you tell the truth without panic, accusation, or endless repetition. Act in love means your daily conduct remains honest, steady, and respectful, whether agreement comes or not. Repair quickly means you take responsibility when fear enters your tone or behavior. And leaving personal choice with the other person means you refuse to claim authority you have not been given. Say it aloud: I will pray in hope, I will speak peace, I will act in love, I will repair quickly, I will respect another person's agency. Notice what you did not say. You did not predict what anyone else would decide. You did not promise when the household would change. You declared what belongs to your responsibility. For the next 7 mornings, practice this rule before the day gathers momentum. Read it slowly, or write it where you can see it. Then name one household, concern only one. Tell God honestly why it troubles you. Release the outcome and the timetable. Then choose one loving action that is within your responsibility today. It may be listening carefully. It may be keeping a commitment, offering practical help, maintaining a wise limit, giving promised space, or correcting a harsh word. Keep it concrete. Keep it faithful. Do not make the action a strategy for obtaining a response. The purpose of these 7 days is not to guarantee relational or spiritual change. The purpose is to train your own influence toward peace. And when a charged moment comes, pause before you answer. Ask yourself, is this faithful influence, or am I trying to take control? Ask it before the extra question. Ask it before the message is sent. Ask it when your tone begins to harden or when silence tempts you to punish. If it is faithful influence, proceed with truth and love. If it is control, stop, pray, and choose again. But what if I violate the rule? Then repair promptly. Do not wait until you feel perfectly composed. Do not spend 3 days defending yourself inwardly. Name what happened. My fear took over. I pressed you after you had answered. My tone was wrong. I am sorry. Make the correction, then return to the practice. You may need this rule beyond 7 days. Most of us will. But 7 days gives your faith a concrete place to begin in the morning, in the conversation, and in the moment after a failure. You may not control the household's ending, but you can choose the spirit, words, and conduct you bring into it today. The story may remain unfinished. Grief may still be present. Questions may remain unanswered. Yet you can become a peaceful, truthful, faithful presence within that unfinished story. So begin today. Pray in hope. Speak peace. Act in love. Repair quickly. Honor personal choice. Then tomorrow morning, begin again.